Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Burke County Board of Commissioners pre-agenda meeting for Tuesday, August the 6th. Madam Clerk, all of the commissioners are here today, along with the county manager and deputy county manager, finance officer, and the county attorney. Please, everyone in the audience, if you would, check your mobile devices now, if you would, and turn those on silent for me. I would appreciate that. And please remember to activate the red light if you're coming up to the table. Gentlemen, the first item is the approval of the agenda. Before we have a motion to approve, we need to remove item number 3 from community development, the zoning map amendment ZMA 2019-07, a public hearing. The person that has submitted that asked for a removal, does not want us to hear that, and that was the 1.55 acres up on Lake James. So that's the only thing that would be different on that, and with that, I will entertain a motion to approve. Thank you, Wayne. All in favor, signify by raising the right hand. Madam Clerk, will be 5-0. We have no presentation, so we'll move directly to number 4, the scheduled public hearings. The first one, community development. Zoning map amendment ZMA 2019-05, presented by Peter Mentor. Peter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, board and other distinguished people. This first map amendment is CMA 2009-05, as Chairman pointed out. I'm going to just sort of give the brief view of this. These things can get overcomplicated, and that doesn't necessarily have to be the case with these rezonings, even though they encompass quite a bit of land area. I'll just give you a brief background of why we're here today. Back in 2004, Crescent Resources, petitioned Burke County to rezone approximately 1,122 acres of land off NC 126 in the Linville Township to a parallel conditional plan mixed use district. That land was under the planned residential mixed use district at the time, so the rezoning was basically to bring it into a conditional district, which the zoning ordinance allows under Section 9A. Along with that rezoning petition, the Crescent Resources also asked the county to adopt a development plan that would provide for future development of those parcels under that rezoning. That development plan is this document right here, and this currently is how those parcels are supposed to be developed under this plan. So we have our zoning ordinance, we have subdivision ordinance, but they are overridden by this document here for the most part. So this applies to these properties in which we're discussing under this zoning map amendment. So that was back in 2004. Crescent Resources, Crescent Communities developed a subdivision entitled Dry Creek early after that initial rezoning, and that development was part of South Point community. And around that, just after that time, if you recall, the whole country more or less had a recession, and it specifically affected housing and building in the country, and that carried over, of course, into Burke County. So during a period of I guess about 6 years or so, the housing market was pretty stagnant. Construction starts fell, And so there wasn't a whole lot of development going on during that time, beginning probably around 2008 to 2012. Well, according to the Burke County zoning ordinance, when somebody rezones property to one of these conditional districts, they have 2 years to initiate development of these projects. And during the recession, Crescent Communities came to the county several times asking for extensions of time for that 2-year window of development, and those extensions were granted. And so the last extension ended in March 31st, 2014. And as you know, Crescent Communities have since sold off all their land and have basically left Burke County. When they sold off some of that land, there was one developer who purchased land and moved forward with development, and that was a subdivision entitled Water's Edge. And they developed the tract that was referred to prior as the East Lake 6 tract, or Texas tract. It sort of, the shape of it resembled Texas. So they developed subdivision in there some years back, but since that time, no other project has been proposed or developed in these East Lake tracts. So in order, again, to follow zoning ordinance, we want to move forward with removing the remainder of the undeveloped tracts from both this development plan and rezone them to an appropriate zoning district as the zoning ordinance calls us to do. So what we were proposing for this area is the low-density conservation district. These parcels are waterfront, and so the conservation district does provide for some conservation efforts to protect water quality and also the scenic beauty of that area of Lake James. And one way it does that is to require 3.5 acres per lot whenever somebody is to subdivide land. And so without public water and public sewer in that area, we felt to conserve water quality and scenic beauty, any development at the lake should be fit into that conservation district. And so that is what we're proposing under ZMA 2019-05. The map shows the land there as it would be zoned as the low-density conservation. You see all around there is it would be consistent with the CDL. Now, when we get into the next rezoning, the parcels that you see mostly remaining in the blue would follow along with this for the most part. So the previous slide shows it as it is right now, the PRMU CD, and then it would show it as the conservation district. Now, those little outlying parcels were not part of the conditional rezoning. That's why they weren't included in this rezoning, but they are included in the next rezoning. So that's basically what we're trying to do, is to follow the zoning ordinance, and it says that if the property's not developed within 2 years, that the county should come back and rezone it to an appropriate zoning district. And in doing so, that would mean removing these restrictions or the development plan that was initiated for those parcels.
All right, gentlemen, you've heard the presentations. Questions or comments for Peter?
Peter, who owns most of this property now?
It's split. There's one owner that owns a majority of it, but he sold some of that property off, and he's held on to some. He's got a corporation name, and he also owns some privately. And so his name is Lee Zinzao, and he also owns property in that Dry Creek community as well. He basically owns the two parcels that we see. Let me get up and show you so you'll be aware. Here and here, he did own this. He sold this off here, and I think some of this here is in the corporation name, but for the he owns the majority of the property that's up there. We have been in contact, or constant just about contact with him in what we're planning to do. He had lots and lots and lots of questions. We probably spent, I don't know, close to 10 hours plus talking to him, trying to explain what this was. His idea for the property is also conservation minded, and so he doesn't have an issue with what we're proposing here. I think his issue is he's trying to find out what kind of tax situation would this change for him, or what kind of future sale or donation this might change. He had one time had proposed selling this to the Conservancy and the state parks, and from what I understand, he had that deal established. The money was raised, and then he came back at the last minute and wanted some changes made, and that deal was backed away from, and so did not go through. But he's conservation minded and does not have an issue with the rezoning to conservation. Just kind of concerned about how tax values and things might, or future sale values might be affected. And I don't know that information. I'm not a realtor or a tax person, but I don't see how this would really affect that property, especially from a conservation standpoint.
Commissioner Tony?
Pete, on your application, of course, Burke County is the applicant.
Correct.
And I read, I think, in the information, and I tried to find it again just before it came up here. How many property owners are involved in this, other than Duke Power?
Let's see here. We have, you're asking property owners, not, okay. I don't have that information in front of me, but I think there was about 13 parcels.
Okay.
Most of them were under that Lee Zinzao or his corporation name. There may have been 6 parcels that were of other ownership.
So I think the question is, since we're the applicant, does each one of those owners, did they get a letter, or are
Oh,
they
yeah.
aware?
Yes.
Okay, so they'll come next week for the public hearing if they're unhappy?
I would assume so. The only property owner that's contacted us was Lee Zinzao, the owner of those large tracts. He's the only one that we've received contact from.
Well, I just wondered because it's such a, and I understand the reasoning behind it, that it probably needs to be done, but I just think when we're the applicant, they at least need to get a letter and
Oh, yeah.
say, this is being proposed, so that they have a chance to voice their opinion on it.
That's right, and that's a requirement of statute. So, actually, if you recall, this was on previous month's agenda as well, and so they've actually been notified several times about this.
That's the only questions I had, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments?
Pete, just in layman's terms, can you just tell us, going to this, how much more restrictive it's gonna be? Just,
It would actually be a bit more restrictive as far as not allowing as many commercial development to take place. And I think without the availability of public water and public sewer, the majority of the things, land uses that could be allowed would not be able to happen because it doesn't have the public water or sewer. So that sort of is another reason why rezoning this makes sense. A lot of the uses that are allowed there now just wouldn't be feasible with wells and septics.
Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none without objection, Pete, this item will remain on the agenda. Moving on to item number 2 from Community Development, also zoning map amendment ZMA 2019-06. Again, Peter.
Thank you, sir. Okay. This, again, is following up with this rezoning of the northeast end of Lake James. And I broke this rezoning down into, it's one rezoning request, but broke it into a A and B because there's a lot more parcels involved, and also there's 2 different zoning districts that is being requested here. Again, we're starting out for the most part with the planned residential mixed-use district, although this district and these parcels were not part of that conditional district that Crescent Communities initiated back in 2004, but these parcels were zoned similarly back in that time. These parcels are multiple, and they're owned by different entities. Crescent did own several of them at one time, but they weren't under the East Lake conditional district. One large parcel was under a separate conditional district, which was entitled the Conservation District. And so I'll get into that just in a minute. But here we're talking about similarly, these parcels are across the street from the conditional district. They were zoned PRMU, and also the situation is the same. There's not going to be water and sewer provided to those parcels, so the small lot sizes that are allowed under PRMU and all the commercial potential commercial uses that are allowed under PRMU just wouldn't be consistent without public water and public sewer. So we felt that it would be appropriate to rezone these parcels to both the conservation district, back, there you go, to the conservation district as what is adjoining them to the east there. The lower end, the smaller parcels, we would rezone those to the residential 1 district, which is adjoining them there to the south. And so we're just looking to try to make these consistent with what's out there already, providing the fact that there's not public water, public sewer to service those properties. So that's what this 2019-06A would be about. And then as we move into 2019-06B, we're moving into what was part of Crescent's property. It's now been sold to state of North Carolina. Originally, that rezoning back in 2004 consisted of over 5,000 acres, and this is one of the remnant parcels of that rezoning back in 2004. There was one major subdivision that came out of that rezoning, and they also had a development plan as well for those properties that were rezoned to that conditional district. And that subdivision is what's known as the 1780 subdivision. Consists of several hundred acres, probably closer to 1,000 acres, and that has been developed. Those lots have been platted, and so we do not believe that it would be appropriate to rezone an existing subdivision with folks that have bought into that subdivision under development rules and plans that they bought into. So we're not proposing to rezone those parcels, but we are proposing to rezone the undeveloped parcels. Now, some of these parcels are also privately owned as well on that east side of NC 126, and staff has again reached out to these property owners, sent letters to them, and the word sort of got out, and we received probably 50 calls from folks, both property owners and other folks, and by
Property owners in 1780.
not 1780, the property owners that, and I don't know if we got that slide available, but on the, let's see, yeah, right, on the, right here, these property owners, we've got some calls from those folks, and we've got calls from the sort of the environmental community, probably about 50 calls, and they are all in support of the rezoning to the conservation district. The people that actually own some parcels, they wanted to know a little bit more about what that meant for them, and that was explained to them as well, and did not have anybody that was outright against what this rezoning was to do. So that's what we're proposing for this rezoning is to rezone, I'll just go about it, 4 parcels of land, approximately 11 acres from the R3. Those were those little outlying parcels that, right there, what Madam Clerk's pointing out. Those outlying parcels are R3, and we propose to rezone those to the CDL district, Conservation Low Density. Further proposing rezoning 37 parcels of land consisting approximately 125 acres from the planned residential mixed use to the R1 district. Those were those smaller parcels down to the bottom of your screen here, okay? And then staff proposing rezoning 9 parcels of land consisting of approximately 1,455 acres from Conservation Estate Lot Conditional District to the Conservation District Low Density. Those parcels that I mentioned were the ones under this development plan here. And then finally, staff's proposing to rezone 9 parcels of land consisting of approximately 508 acres from planned residential mixed use to the low density conservation district. And that concludes my report. And again, this is to mainly take care of the situation where in the plans under Crescent Resources, they were going to provide an extension of public water, public sewer up to these parcels up here. And after they got out of the picture, we just don't see that happening. The expense would be too much for any smaller developer to undertake. And that being the case, those properties and those small lot sizes that are allowed, we just don't think it'd be appropriate under the current zoning.
I think be questions for Peter on this proposed rezoning?
Mr. Chairman, I have 3, but Pete, they all interrelate, so I'm just, by rezoning this to low-density conservation, how will that impact the property values, up or down? If so, and how much? And how much will it affect the budget as far as we're concerned on either reducing or increasing the taxes?
Yeah. From what I know, and that's not a whole lot about property taxes and values, these lands being all undeveloped, I don't think that the tax would change that much. It's when you start developing the property that the tax value changes. Then you're adding different things like landfill user fees and different things to the property, which they don't have right now. So I'm sure Danny Eisenhower could comment more to this question, but I don't think it really changes tax values that much in the current form that it is.
Okay, you mentioned a word that prompted another question. You said they wouldn't increase in value till they started development of it. So will this enhance development or sale of the property, or?
Well, what you might be asking, and I could speak to this, by rezoning to the low-density conservation district, there wouldn't be as many potential lots to be developed. So in that respect, that could affect future currently PRMU district, they're allowed to have half-acre lots. Rezoning to the low-density conservation district, they would increase to 3.5 acres. So there would be far less lots that could be created and developed. But we feel without public water and public sewer out there, that in this area that we're talking about here, that it really wouldn't be appropriate to go to half-acre lots in this area.
But we would assume, and that's a bad word probably, but we would assume if a half-acre lot brought 25,000, a 3.5 would bring 75 to 100,000.
Right, that's right.
And of course, you would lose on a house. I don't think they'd build big enough house to make up for 3 or 4 other houses, but,
Right.
okay, thank you.
Peter, what would be the challenge if somebody came back and said, well, we can do this, we can put public water and sewer and develop this more intensely? What would be the challenge for that to happen?
Well, if that were to happen, they would have several choices. They could either develop the land under that current conditional conservation district, in which case the overall density of that development would be 3.5 acres. What we've seen in the past is people could still create smaller lots to maximize the waterfront area, smaller lots there, but the overall density of 3.5 acres would be made up in open space. So they could develop quite a few lots along the waterfront. The interior, which doesn't sell quite as well, could be just devoted to open space to meet that 3.5 acre average density. Now, the other scenario would be if they were really going for an all-out maximization of number of lots, they could, of course, petition to rezone the property back to a district that would allow smaller lot sizes. In that, if water was provided out, that could be appropriate at that time.
Other questions or comments? Peter, if water went there, that water would probably have to come from Morganton, am I correct?
That's correct. And we did contact Morganton about that, and they said they probably had capacity to extend the water out, but the sewer was going to be the problem, and they didn't think they could extend that out. One thing, it's a pressurized line, and 2, they just didn't know if the cost would work, you know, to do that. It'd have to be a really big, you know, development to make it cost effective.
Other questions or comments for Pete? All right, hearing none, without objection, this item will remain on the agenda, Pete.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for
Appreciate
your
it.
presentation.
Yes, sir.
All right, with item number 3 removed, that'll move us into our consent agenda with item number 1 being the reappointment and removal from the Parks and Recreation Commission presented by Kay Drone. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, guests. This is a request to remove Tim Roney and Joseph Lane and Rebecca Ramsey from the Parks and Recreation Commission for attendance, and to reappoint Mo Beam to seat number 10 representing Oak Hill for the remainder of a 3-year term ending March 31st, 2022.
Questions for Kay on these appointments?
Mr. Chairman, I didn't have one, but I would like to ask one. Simply, how many vacancies do we have on that board? I could have looked it up if I'd have thought of that question earlier.
We didn't have any until we removed these.
Okay.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving to item number 2 is appointments to the Burke Senior Center Advisory Board. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The terms of appointment for Susan Janey and Gwen Huffman on the Senior Center Advisory Board ended March 31st. Both applicants are willing to serve another term. In addition, an application from Dave Lammers was received for vacant seat number 2. So we're just requesting to reappoint Ms. Janey and Ms. Huffman and to appoint Mr. Lammers, all for terms ending March 31st, 2022 instead of 3022.
Questions for Kay on the Burke Senior Center Advisory Board? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving to item number 3 is a resolution amending our 2019 meeting schedule. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a request to amend our 2019 meeting schedule. We were supposed to go to the Jonas Ridge community in September. We contacted the Jonas Ridge Fire Department, but they were not able to accommodate our meeting request, and this resolution simply moves the meeting back to this room.
Any questions for Kay?
Mr. Chairman, a comment, they hosted us 2 or 3 times before, and they hosted so well. Kind of breaks your heart, but anyhow, I understand. Thank you.
All right, without any objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on to item number 4 from the Department of Social Services regarding our annual memorandum of understanding between the North Carolina Division of Health and Human Services and Burke County. That will be presented by Kathy Craig, our interim director. Kathy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Session Law 2017-41 requires an annual memorandum of understanding between the Department of Health and Human Services in each county. So this request is to approve to ratify the annual memorandum of understanding.
All right, questions or comments to Kathy?
Mr. Chairman, I just had one. I brought this up once before, but in part of that memo of understanding, and JR, I meant to call you, but I got busy with other meetings. Several places it makes the county the lead entity, if you will. It says the county will achieve or meet goals instead of the DSS. And then on the next couple of pages, it says DSS on the behalf of the county represents. And my question, JR, just very simply, shouldn't it all be kind of consistent, meaning that the DSS on the behalf of the county will do and achieve these goals as it's laid out in that memo of understanding?
Well, that was one of our problems. That was one of our problems last year in the original memorandum, is that this places the county in direct liability for DSS actions. And it also allows the state to come in and take over the DSS at the county's expense. So we would feel comfortable not being named on this contract, that's memorandum of understanding at all, because DSS has their separate board and their separate operating system. But DHHS has consistently turned us down on those suggestions and saying that the county has to have liability in there. So the county is in there for the financial aspects. And they won't let us take a back seat on that.
Well, I just, I see where you're coming from, and I know if it's a law, it's a law, and you gotta be in compliance with the way they want that contract written. But it just seems absurd in one sense of the word that, they hold us responsible for a group of employees that we have absolutely no control over.
Right.
And that was my point, that it makes a whole lot more sense that that wording be changed to where DSS, and I think they do, know that they're ultimately responsible for producing whatever results that, that lead agency wants them to do. And I do realize they want a third party and partially in charge, so they'll have somebody to blame, so.
Right.
But with that understanding, I just, it really is kind of speaking out of both sides of your mouth, if you get my drift, and I thank you for the response.
Well, last year, we actually filed a memorandum stating our objections to the contract. They wouldn't allow any amendments to the contract, so we filed a separate document with them, just documenting the problems that we have with this agreement that they say every county has to sign. So we're on the record on that anyway.
Any other comments? All right, hearing none, without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you so very much, Kathy. All right, moving on to item number 5 from Community Development is support of the Foothills Conservancy purchase of the Oak Hill Park, and that will be presented by Shane Prisby, Community Development Operations Manager. Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. The Foothills Conservancy has an option to purchase a large contiguous tract of land just outside of the city limits of Morganton in Burke County. This property, they're intending to develop into a community park and forest, integrating trails, educational opportunities, possibly some agriculture, community gardens, and kind of a diverse project use for public land near a population center within the county. They have asked us for a letter of support, and it is not a financial obligation now or in the future. It's saying that we're supportive of this project as they go forward with it and try to get the funding to acquire this land within the timeline that they have, and that we'll work with them in different capacities to help them achieve that goal, and this resolution would be something they would use to pursue funding options. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions or comments for Shane about the
Mr.
conservancy?
Chairman, I do have a comment. I had a question here. Can any part of that resolution be interpreted to ask for financial aid? And I struck that out because later on page 107, under project facts, the total project is $3 million. Foothills is asking both Morganton City and Burke County to commit funds. And my question to that was, I don't feel comfortable agreeing with this unless I know how much funds they may be requesting. But it plainly states that on page 107, that they are, and your comment was that there'd be no impact for budget, but that makes it pretty clear that they're going to be asking for some budget.
Yes, I believe that's their intent in the future, but this is not part of that resolution. The resolution is a separate thing, and that's what this item is for, is that we're generally supportive of the project as a whole, and not, necessarily we are not committing any finances at this time. They have not made a formal request for that. They're just asking for a letter of support so that they can use that to apply for other sorts of grant funding, to supply the project, and then that could change the number that they ask us in the future, or if they have to ask us at all. It depends on the fundraising abilities outside of that.
So but with those statements, we should, as a board, anticipate they're gonna ask us for money somewhere to complete this project.
Yes, I believe that at some point they may come and ask the board and the city for a financial contribution, which again is not part of this specific resolution, but generally in supportive of if they can acquire the funding through different means, through our letter of support would allow them to pursue those different and alternate funding sources that are not coming directly from the county general fund, and that there are other ways that we can support them in that, one being the resolution, or as well as staff time or other different support, identifying grants or things that they would apply, or going in with them on different grant sources. So there's a variety of different ways that we could support this project that are not direct financial contributions, and that's just the step that this is at.
So Shane, we're just offering a letter of support, which I think is a fantastic idea. Grew up in that area. It's a great piece of property, can actually augment what we're doing eventually coming from the lake to Morganton, because that connector trail is going to come right through there. And so, you know, this plays a part into that as well. So, you know, to me, to take this, I think a letter of support, absolutely we can do. And you know, as you were saying, you know, if the cost of the project's $3 million, whatever it is, you know, there's no telling if they're going to even ask us for 50 cents, because if they get enough private donations, well, then they're not going to have to come to the city of Morganton or us. We may have to do it, like you said, other means of support, which I'm absolutely for, but I just think it's a good idea, and a letter of support doesn't cost us anything.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Brian a question. By the way, good to see you healthy and back. You're good. I just wondered if this board, or if there'd be anything wrong with putting in that resolution a simple sentence that no impact on the budget for the county at this time.
If the board, I don't know that there's anything that would prohibit us from putting that kind of language in. It's a resolution of support.
Yeah, we're supporting a theory, but I don't want it to get lost in, to be taken as that at the time we were endorsing the theory, and we love to have it, we're not endorsing money to go along with it. What do you think, JR? Can we do that? Just budget effect none, whatever, that's usually the way we say it.
I think you can add, you know, whatever you want to in there, because it's a resolution of support, and that doesn't take away from your support for the project. It just clarifies that you're not being asked for anything.
I'd like to recommend we do that. I know we can't take action here, but I think we ought to have that wording on there. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments regarding the resolution of support? Shane, I noticed, I referenced back to where Commissioner Taylor was reading, that it appears that $2.2 million of the three's already been pledged so far. And it says Representative Blackwell is seeking a general appropriation for the project. No guarantees, obviously, for that he could get any money, but 2.2 of the anticipated 3, that's a pretty good chunk of it right now. And obviously, they're going to go seek other foundation grants and additional private pledges. So the request was for us to consider committing funds in our respective budgets, so we don't really have to put that in our budget if we didn't want to. Obviously, if they raise the rest of that up to the $3 million total project cost, you think that's where it's going to come in at, about 3, if that's what they said?
That is my understanding from my last conversation with them, and they are looking at this from every angle that they can to find the funding and matching funding
Okay.
through and they're just leaving no stone unturned, and that's why we want to present that information to you so that you're fully aware of where they're at, where they're going, and that they may well raise the funding, or they may come and ask to get us over the finish line. I can't say at this point, but I know that they've worked aggressively to raise every cent that they can from private, public, grant funding, what have you.
All right, if there's no objection, I'm going to ask you to get, if there's no objection for the remainder of the commissioners, I'm going to ask you to get with the county attorney, play with the verbiage a little bit, you know, to show that there's no effect on our budget or anything, if they were just supporting the resolution, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, without any objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you so much, Shane.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item number 6, presented by Miles Champion, our General Services Director, will be concerning our solid waste division, the annual services that are provided, and a name change, I think, of a company that did that for us. Miles?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Yes, Burke County has operated a construction and demolition landfill at the Johns River Waste Management Facility since 1998. Operation of the C&D landfill comes with state requirements for monitoring and reporting. These services are necessary in order to continue the operation of the landfill. The services are provided on an annual basis by Labella Associates, formerly known as Joyce Engineering Incorporated. Additional work required by the state includes quarterly landfill gas monitoring at Johns River, East Burke, and Kirksey Drive landfills. Designing, construction, and administration of gas extraction units at Johns River landfill, and landfill gas remediation at East Burke, Kirksey Drive landfills. Construction costs for the gas extraction units and landfill gas remediation are included as capital improvement items in the FY20 budget. A contract is needed to perform the engineering task as required by NCDEQ Division of Waste Management. The proposed contract with Labella Associates is attached to this item for review. And that I won't go through all the tasks unless you want to talk about them, but those are the general tasks for the contract, totaling $181,000, which is pretty much close to what they've been doing each year.
All right, gentlemen, questions for Miles? All right, hearing none, without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you, Miles.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to item number 7 is a resolution donating surplus radios to the Glen Alpine Police Department, and that will be presented by Sheriff Wilson. Sheriff, take it away.
Thanks, sir. Yes, Glen Alpine had asked if we had any of our older radios that we were surplusing. We've got radios that Motorola is no longer providing support for, and we had no problem with surplusing 3 of those radios to Glen Alpine.
All right, questions for the sheriff? All right, hearing none, without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thanks, Sheriff. All right, moving on to item number 8 is our tax collection report for July 2019, presented by Danny Eisenhower, Tax Administrator. Danny?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I've changed the tax collection report just a little bit beginning this year. Margaret and I talked about it, and so what we're going to look at, if you look at the first column, this is the tax levy. The tax levy is the amount of total taxes that are out there, not based on budget, what we perceive to collect or anything. It's the total amount if you take the value times the rate. So our current tax levy is $42,982,429. We've collected on that, against that budget, $19,191,965.07, which gives us a levy collection rate of 44.65. Now this levy will increase monthly. Typically, as we add discoveries, you'll see a major increase whenever we report September, whenever the public utility values are added to it. But this is different than what you've always seen in the past, is where it was based on budget. Then the lower portion of this is what you've seen in the past, based on budget. You'll see that we, at the bottom grouping, you'll see the property tax. We've collected 44.15% of budget. Motor vehicle tax, 9.52%, which gives us a total budget collection of 40.84% on current year taxes. Delinquent taxes, we were at 15.07, and the late list penalty group, we're at 9.02. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
All right, questions for Danny on the tax collection report? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on to the release refund report. Danny?
Release refund report shows releases in the amount of $104,351.36. Of those, we had $84,879.59 rebilled, which give us a net release amount of $17,471.77. Had refunds in the amount of $1,819.83. The VTS, we had refunds in the amount of $126.62.
All right, questions on the refund report? All right, hearing none without objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on, item number 10 is the order to collect the 2019 taxes. Danny?
Okay. General Statute 105-321 requires the governing body to order the tax collector to collect taxes charged in the tax records. This includes current taxes and any delinquent taxes associated with charges for the previous 10 years. The amounts charged back from the prior years are $2,262,932.01 for county taxes and other charges. Other jurisdictions that we collect for is another $261,942.74 for a total of $2,524,874.75, and that's the delinquent amount charged back. And along with that, I'm also being charged for the current year taxes.
All right, questions on this order from the board to Danny? All right, hearing none without objection, it should remain on the consent item agenda. Moving on, item number 11 is the collections annual settlement report for 2018-2019. Danny?
Yes, sir. North Carolina General Statute 105-373 requires the tax collector to report to the governing body after July 1 and before September 1st each year before being charged with the current fiscal year taxes, all paid and unpaid taxes for the preceding fiscal year, and any other sums collected. The following report represents the sums that the tax collector shall be credited with and delinquents the tax collector shall be charged to collect in the current fiscal year. And I'll draw your attention to Section 1. This is the total tax collections county only. And you will see that this includes what we call prepayments, ones for 2019 that came in prior to July 1st, the 2018 taxes that we collected and the delinquent for a total of $41,324,764. Then if you go on down, you'll see the next is the total of taxes and related collections, county only again. So if you take these taxes plus all the other fields that are listed here, you get that we've collected a total of $44,282,417.33. Section 2 is the tag and tax, county only, that is our VTS. So between interest and tax, we have collected $4,831,244.98. Section 3 is the property taxes and charges for all other jurisdictions. So that's all the other jurisdictions that we're collecting for. So we have the total collections there of $4,367,972.46. Section 4 is the vehicle tax for all other jurisdictions. You'll see there we've got interest, we've got the tax. There's also vehicle fees for Hickory and Morganton that are included in that number. So we have $1,815,025.35. Chargeback of delinquent taxes and related charges. Here I've combined the two, so we've got county only listed. We've got all other jurisdictions listed for a total of $2,524,874.75. We have those taxes that are not charged back to the collector, which are the ones for 2007. So we have uncollected amounts of $115,041.36. Section 7 are our additional revenues, beer and wine, occupancy tax, that type of thing. So we've got an amount of $640,108.33.
I want to stop you there a minute.
Yes.
I'm a little slow and dumb, okay? When I look at beer off premises, we only collected $465 worth of taxes? Line 1, beer
Line
off
1.
premises.
Beer on and off, beer on. Yeah, these are license
Yes,
fees.
okay, licenses.
These are license fee, and if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken, they're, and I
Because
do
we got
not-
more beer drinkers in Burke County now, I guarantee you.
Yeah, I don't have the information in front of me, but I believe that license is only $5.
Okay,
So it takes a lot of $5 to equal
okay, so
$465.
that would just be for licenses.
Yes, that's all these are is license on the
All right,
the beer and the wine.
okay, it clears that up for me, thank you.
Okay. Section 8 through 11.
Wait a minute, I think maybe
Oh,
you had a
excuse me.
question right there too.
I
on beer.
apologize.
It wasn't a question, it was just a comment. Most of that beer and stuff is bought at a grocery store, and it's taxed through the grocery store. But isn't beer taxed higher than regular food?
I do not know. That's
You
a
don't think
sales
so?
tax.
Okay.
Same sales tax. Same sales tax on all items regardless.
My wife works part-time at Foodland, she says sometimes half the groceries are beer items and wine items. So, okay, that's all I.
Okay. All right, sections 8 through 11, and let me first apologize, I do have the wrong date, I will get it
Let me
corrected.
back up. I'm not
Okay. Oh,
finished
I'm
on
sorry.
section 7, okay?
Yes, sir.
Again, you need to enlighten me. Occupancy taxes, 582, is that ours or is that what came in and we got to split it with everybody?
That's what came in that we split with everybody. That's
Okay.
the 6% occupancy tax.
Do you know who gets what?
I
Generally.
I couldn't answer that question, maybe our finance director can.
Who gets what out of the 582? Occupancy tax.
The administrative fee is kept by the county for the tax collection services. The rest goes to Burke County TDA. The Burke County TDA then splits it based on the formula in the statute.
Okay, I just wanted that on the record. All we do is the administrative, the money goes back to TDA, TDA writes the checks, right?
Yes, sir.
And Margaret, those checks are, Morganton gets some, Valdez gets some, and Burke County. But,
Yes, sir, Burke County TDA, not Burke County.
yeah, Burke County TDA,
Yes, sir.
but Morganton and
Yes.
Valdez as well.
Yes.
Ready? Okay, apologize. Okay, section 8 through 11, and like I said, started to say, I want to apologize, I do have a couple wrong dates that I'll get cleared or corrected with the clerk. The 2017, it should be 2018. In accordance with NCGS, a list of all persons owing the 2019 personal property, or excuse me, 2018 personal property, and remain uncollected as of 7/6/2019. Those are 3 corrections that need to be made. Anyway, this is broke down into sections based on the type of property it is. We have the business personal property in the amount of $52,161.76. The individual personal property, $144,000, $825.40, and real property, $769,250.65, for a total of $966,237.81. And that's all, like I say, the 2018 uncollected that will roll over. A list of those, I believe, is provided in your documentation. And then I certify that the collection staff has made diligent efforts in collecting the collection, using all the collection remedies available, which are notices, second notices, wage garnishment, bank attachment, debt set-off, foreclosure, and the delinquent collection service, to collect all delinquent debts. These delinquent debts are for the years 2008 through 2017, including those 2018 taxes that became delinquent after January 5th of 2019. I respectfully request the Burke County Board of Commissioners to accept this report as annual settlement for the fiscal year ending June 30, 2019.
Any other questions or comments for Danny? Hearing none, with objection, this item will remain on the consent item agenda. Thank you for that report, Danny.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us with questions. All right, moving on to item number 6 is our items for decision. Appointment to the Animal Advisory Board presented by Kay Donald. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Seat number 7, which as of this minute, right now, is for an at-large, non-pet owner. And as you know, we've not been able to fill that seat since the inception of this board. Changing the ordinance is on your 4 o'clock. That's part of the materials at our 4 o'clock meeting. So assuming that goes through, this is a request. That seat will be changed to an at-large pet owner, and which is vacant. And we have now, since the agenda went out, we have 4 applicants on file for seat number 7. And that would be to complete an unexpired term ending July 31st, 2020. And you have copies of the newest applications that came in after agenda distribution at your seats.
It appears you have several good applicants.
Yes, we do.
All right, questions for Kay on this matter? All right, hearing none, without objection, this item will remain on the items for decision. All right, is there anything else that needs to be reported to me at this time?
Reports.
Yep. Okay. Moving into our reports part of the section, I want to express our appreciation to Samantha Snowder, who is the store leader at PetSmart, for their more than generous contribution at dog and cat food and supplies for the Animal Services Center. We went over there this morning, and there's just a pile of it, and we certainly do appreciate that. All right, if there's nothing else to come before us at this time, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn our pre-agenda meeting. And Maynard has made that motion. All in favor, signify by raising the right hand. It's all 5. Does anybody need to take a 5-minute break before we move in? Madam Clerk does, so we will take a 5-minute break before we move into our next section.